Hey folks, welcome to the first episode of the Chaos Theory. This episode, I will talk about the name of the podcast, The Chaos Theory. So let's dive into it. What is chaos? How does it drive us towards insanity and lunacy? Well, chaos is not just a random word. It's one of the most powerful words. Chaos is one of the most important signs that signal mental illness. But not every illness is chronic. Sometimes it just leads to heightened senses, anxiety and panic. But most of these symptoms are very common among people nowadays. So going back to our question, what is chaos? Chaos generally means randomness and complete disorder. Through a philosophical point of view, many have explained their interpretations of the vast concept, famously by German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who believed life is meaningless due to its disorder. His words on chaos: one must still have a chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. For him, chaos was more of a form of creativity, and being an artist in that period was not a sort of job. As we know about Van Gogh's time on Earth, Vincent Van Gogh, who is regarded as one of the best painters of the world, lived a miserable life. Everybody knew him to be that insane madman, just roaming around the streets painting. Every artist must embrace the chaos to filter out their best work. To quote Nietzsche again, those thinkers in whom the stars move in cyclic orbits are not the most profound. Whoever looks into himself as into a vast space and carries galaxies himself also knows how irregular galaxies are. They lead into chaos and labyrinth of existence. Nietzsche's use of word chaos is reminiscent of the ancient Greeks' definition. It should be read as synonymous with the Greek word physis, meaning that which brings forth for all and out of itself. The ancient Greek mythology's account of how the universe came to say chaos was the first of all. Nietzsche's identify chaos as the creative potential within the culture, the will to power, the fundamental essence of the world. Consider today's definition of chaos. Immediately upon hearing the word, most of us would envision a mess, complete and total confusion, or a total lack of any organization. This creative force that previously referred to the infinity of space before anything else existed now has a negative connotation. Those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who couldn't hear the music. As Nietzsche's word, if we wish to scientifically characterize human choices, we have to work with a probabilistic or chaos-derived model. This has several implications for the philosophy of mind. Firstly, it is in theory of possible to describe human behavior with some form of law-like equation. It is just a matter of figuring out what equation best captures the state of central nervous system. Secondly, it means that our choices are not random but are chaotic, deterministic, but just hard to predict due to internal complexity. According to current research, our actions are most likely to be caused by precipitated avalanches of neural activity which are difficult to predict due to chaos. In literature, it is sometimes claimed that chaos theory, nonlinear dynamics, and theory of fractals have major implications for the philosophy of medicine, especially for our analysis of the concept of disease and the concept of causation. This paper gives a brief introduction to the concepts underlying chaos theory and nonlinear dynamics. It is then shown that chaos theory has only very minimal implications for the analysis of the concept of disease and the concept of causation, mainly because the mathematics of chaos process entail that these processes are fully deterministic. The practical unpredictability of chaos processes caused by the extreme sensitivity of initial conditions may raise practical problems in diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment, but it raises no major theoretical problems. The relation between chaos theory and the problem of free will is discussed, and it is shown that chaos theory may remove the problem of predictability of decisions, but does not solve the problem of free will. Chaos theory may thus be very important for our understanding of physiological processes and specific disease entities without having any major implication for the philosophy of medicine. An intriguing implication of the branch of mathematics called chaos theory is that the future states of complex dynamical systems such as the weather, the human brain, the stock market, evolution, and history itself are not what we once thought them to be. Specifically, the chaos theory suggests that the behavior of complex systems can follow laws and yet their future states remain in principle unpredictable. The behavior of complex systems is exquisitely sensitive to conditions, so that small changes in the start can result in ever larger changes over time. Hence, chaos theory implies that the future is not predictable based on the past events, as it used to be thought or to be. Or in other words, that have been attributed to both physicist Niels Bohr and baseball manager Yogi Berra, prediction is very difficult, especially about the future. In this vein, we should also take a moment to consider the wisdom of comedian and philosopher extraordinaire George Carlin. To quote his words, "No one knows what's next, but everybody does it." This is important as well as funny because it reminds us that the future is independent of us, following in a straight line from the past, but it constituted by what we and everyone and everything else do, in a hodgepodge mixture of human actions and biological and physical happenings that feed back into each other. Our lived reality is one in which effects exist fleetingly in the process of becoming causes. That there be what's next is inevitable, but what comes next is not theoretically predictable, according to chaos theory. The property of complex system whose behavior is unpredictable as it appear to be random, owing to great sensitivity to small changes in conditions. This is to answer our main question of what is chaos. Well, to be more specific with this definition of chaos, through a physicist's point of view, chaos, when the present determines the future, but the approximate present does not approximately determine the future, as stated by Edward Lorenz, who established the chaos theory through his observation as meteorologist. Chaotic behavior exists in many natural forms, including fluid flow, heartbeat, sorry for disturbance. So where was I? The chaotic behavior exists in many natural systems, including fluid flow, heartbeat irregularities, weather, and climate. It also occurs spontaneously in some systems with artificial components such as stock market and road traffic. This behavior can be studied through analysis of chaotic mathematical model or analytical techniques such as recurrence plots and point clear maps. Chaos theory has applications in a variety of disciplines, including meteorology, anthropology, sociology, physics, environmental science, computer science, engineering, economics, biology, ecology, pandemic crisis and management, and philosophy. The theory formed the basis for such fields of study as complex dynamic systems, the edge of chaos theory, and self-assembly processes. Now let's take an example. Imagine a water faucet is turning on gradually. The water would flow fairly smoothly with very little variations in flow. Increasing the flow of the tap tends to increase what fluid mechanics call turbulence. The seemingly random fluctuations in the flow of pattern of the water. Putting the tap on the full blast would create a messy chaotic flow of water with seemingly no discernible pattern. This turbulence, however, must be controlled by a variety of simple factors, such as the speed of flow, the pressure of water, the atmospheric condition, and the shape of the tap, and the volume of water as well. However, despite looking into simple patterns, it rapidly becomes unpredictable. Its behavior, nevertheless, isn't random. It's just essentially impossible to predict out. In rare instances, we notice the flow smooths itself out when all the conditions of the system are at certain values or positions, and a temporary order is produced. In very basic terms, if you plot this hypothetically infinite number of variations in a graph in infinite space called phase space, you produce self-competing spirals pattern called strange attractors. This is chaos theory. There is chaos throughout the graph except a few infinitesimal small points wherein order is found. Throughout the universe, there are systems that, despite being inherently chaotic and unpredictable, tend to naturally become ordered. They fight against the inexorable entropic increase of the universe, the overall trend of every system to go from ordered state to a disordered state. Chaotic systems sound like systems destined for disorder and destruction. So where is all this self-organizing, self-preserving order emerging from? One leading idea is that these strange attractors, small periods wherein orders form from chaos cancelling itself, or temporarily exist everywhere from the found. Sorry, I was just too fast. One leading idea is that these strange attractors, small periods where order forms from chaos cancelling itself out, temporarily exist everywhere from formation of galaxies due to initial chaotic instabilities in the formation of fabric of space-time itself, to the honeycomb-esque arrangement of bubbles rising on the surface of a carbonated drink. There are a myriad of examples of self-organizing systems in nature, but a particularly interesting one to me is the three-body problem. The three-body problem is as follows. Imagine three moons orbiting a planet. The gravitational force from the planet keep the moon in orbit, but what effect would each moon's individual gravitational field have on the other moons? If they orbited in a regular pattern, the small perturbations of one moon on the other might gradually pull one out of the orbit and cause a huge impact event on two of the moons crashed into each other. The near infinite variables of the weather systems across the planet appear stable when looked at from a distance. We call this particular form of chaotic order the enormous strange attractor or climate. Life itself is an expression of self-organizing systems, profound considering the consciousness of process that led up to the formation of life in the first place. But for human beings, the improbable profoundness of chaos theory goes even deeper. Not towards the biological part of the discipline. The neurons in our brain only fire in response to other electric signal firing at them. In each neuron represents a self-enclosed one-dimensional object in a space with billions of one-dimensional objects there. Then your brain has a hypothetical billion dimensions within itself. So when one neuron fires, the path may initially be deterministic, but the cascade of electrochemical transitions rapidly become unpredictable. From 10 billion neurons to dimensions, a single thought generates a hypothetical infinite number of chaotic paths. However, this process is not random, it is merely chaotic. So what if consciousness itself is a point of time frozen for examination within this space? What if your personality is where the chaos originally settles in a strange attractor? Chaos is something that, biologically speaking, can be quite healthy for you or quite dangerous, depending on the organ. If the electric signals in your heart show signs of chaos and unpredictability, this can lead to a heart attack. On the other hand, an epileptic seizure is nothing more than a pattern of abnormally periodical order in the electrochemical signals in your brain. Either way, understanding the system are inherently chaotic. Despite having simple deterministic variables, it's important to come up with conclusions as to how they will behave in future. Chaos theory generates another particular wonderful question. How long is the coastline of Britain? Right? This is the most important paradox considered to be related to chaos theory. Because when you stretch out a coastline, you will see that there are a number of turns, number of small edges that you miss out when you straighten out. Because when you zoom in, you will see thousands of edges that are curled up to itself, and when you zoom out, you will most likely to see a straight line or just less number of lines as compared to when you zoom in. So one can never really understand the coastline systems. So that's what it's mentioned, right? So this question, how long is the coastline of Britain? You can easily answer that, right? Just Google it and find out that there's some random number attached to it. But how do you even measure it? Why not just use a ruler to measure the coastline? But what size ruler do you use? If you made the ruler small and more accurate, it would be able to measure small kinks in the coastline that you previously couldn't. The overall length of coastline would thus increase using this small ruler, reduce the size of ruler even more, and even smaller kinks would be inaccessible once again. The total length would increase, and so on and so on. If the ruler were infinitesimally small, the coastline would be infinitely large in size. This is an example of fractal, another bizarre feature of bizarre theory. So, what does it mean to say? Like, we know that to get accurate reading, we must use the smaller units of measurement. But how accurately can we measure something? If we use the smallest known measurement, we still know that there's something even smaller than it. If we use atoms, we know there's quarks, there's subatomic particles. If we use subatomic particles, we know that there are particles not just in existence, but we know theoretically they are present. So, however small the measurement of unit of measurement is, we can not be 100% sure about the measurement itself. Fractals are everywhere. The branches of the trees have themselves branches that, upon zooming in, would look like very similar to the larger branches. The nerves in your body branch out in a similarly semi-repeating way. Cities even have fractal patterns. As they develop, they branch out. When these branches gain enough to have a certain critical mass, population, money, infrastructure, etc., then they start to branch out in a similar way. Fractals are always way of seeing infinity. Infinity does not certainly imply chaos, but order once again emerges out of it. For example, the global distribution of earthquakes is known to fit in mathematical pattern. This pattern was difficult to see until someone realized the pattern was fractal. And let me ask you this: have you ever considered life as a form of fractals? Because when we try to figure out something, we know that, like, for example, take ourselves. When we try to figure out ourselves, we know that what are our likes, what are our dislikes. But when we try to arrange our life in a way that we deem to see fit, we are not setting ourselves in the path of order, but in path of chaos. Because when you do something, you are focused on it at 100%, but there are always implications on how it would be done. And if you are trying to obstruct yourself with those sets of rules that you designed to live your life with, you're deemed to be done with chaos. So let's turn to our final part, the quantum consciousness. Finally, what are we trying to make of Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics? According to Copenhagen interpretation, our very choice of which atomic behavior. Sorry, let's just restart about this. Quantum consciousness. Finally, what are we trying to make of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics? According to Copenhagen interpretation, our very choice of which atomic behavior to observe determines what exists. As Pascal Jordan, one of the founders of quantum theory, puts it, observation not only disturbs what it is measured, they produce it. On this interpretation, a clear boundary does not seem to exist between observer and the observed, between consciousness and the atomic phenomena measured. This conclusion bothered Einstein more than even the random behavior of atoms, because it calls into question the existence of physical reality apart from the observer. In the terms of physicist John Wheeler, useful as it is to understand everyday circumstances to say that the world exists out there, independent of us, that view can no longer be upheld. There is a strange sense in which this is a participatory universe. All of this raises the most interesting question. Do we need to rethink our notions not only of the future but who we are? To extend that we identify with our consciousness, this seems to mean that each of us is more intimately connected with the world than we ordinarily imagine. But like other complex dynamic systems, what are is unbounded. Even if we can be distinguished from other things for many purposes such as death, taxes and marriage, whether we see our connection to this universe as a whole as metaphysically spooky depends on whether we characterize the elephant by feeding its individual part, or instead we see that parts have arisen in relation to each other. and to the greater environment as a whole, and so we can identify the whole thing. Clearly, chaos theory has undiscovered powerful natural processes that we only begin to understand. So, what are we to conclude about the future? Given chaos theory's contention that complex systems act deterministically but are not thereby predictable, we can say that soothsayers and all such pundits are overpaid. But to be serious, there is a sense in which the future is open, since complex systems are extremely sensitive to initial conditions, to circular feedback, and to interactions with other complex systems. What is going to happen in the world seems to be dependent on how all the world's complex systems behave from moment to moment. The future, then, is self-organized but to no particular end, purpose or plan. Returning to the bigger picture of life itself, the fact that chaotic systems are extremely sensitive to initial conditions does not certainly creative in nature, since such sensitivity makes it possible to a sort of elbow room, providing space for the results of natural processes to be unique in the sense of non-repeatable in detail. The late paleontologist Stephen J. Gould argued that history contingency in this series plays a great part in evolution as natural selection does. In Wonderful Life, a film in 1990, his book in 1990, he said that if we could turn back evolution on Earth to its beginnings and restart the process with slightly different initial conditions, the organism on our planet would look radically different. Chaos theory is just a difficult topic to stop thinking about. After all, even reading this article is generating chaos in both our lives and your consciousness. So if you have ever sat down after a long week exhausted from deadlines and thoughts and considerations and hopes and regrets and wondered why your life seems so chaotic, especially in retrospect, you can look far back into time and blame a dinosaur or a butterfly or perhaps a philosopher writing his imagination and ruminations on the universe down on a piece of paper. And when someone in your job interview asks you where you see yourself in 5 years' time, point out to the chaos theory and state that you could be anywhere from joining a traveling circus as a trapeze artist or burying a box on a remote Japanese island. After all, it's a scientific sound, so to say so. So that's how I conclude my first episode. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you soon. Thanks.